In this video, I'm going to show you how I design a weekly language learning plan that helps me not only maintain, but make steady progress in 7 languages. Yes, you heard right, 7. When it comes to language learning, there is a time and place for dabbling, for taking it easy, for studying with no set plan or goal. But there's also a time and place for getting more serious and implementing some kind of study plan that is specific to what you need to improve and will help you make some kind of steady progress. So that's what we're going to talk about today. I kind of already touched on this subject in my New Year's video, so you should go watch that. It's kind of like the prequel and this is the sequel. But here I am yapping about it again because I feel like I just wanted to go a bit more in depth with it and also just expand on a few tips that are just good for routine building in general. Routine. I feel like, okay, that's like a trigger word for me. It's not really a routine what I do, but we'll get into that later. If you're more of a chill learner like me, you might cringe even at the idea of making a plan because, I don't know, you don't like to feel boxed in, you hate repetition, so do I. You aren't good at sticking to any type of plan, and that's fine. I am like you, but I have found a way to introduce some structure into my language learning, but still keep it lax and not boring and personalized to what I like. So just to give you an overview of how I do things, I study one main language a week and I switch them out every week. I need a salt and pepper tomato, by the way. That's why we're here. You're sitting on top of a salt box live. Look at y'all. So I call this my shuffling method, and this is the order in which I shuffle them. I try to make it so that super similar languages don't follow each other. So Spanish isn't coming after French, it's after whatever, Farsi, I don't remember. So yes, this may come as a shock that I don't study multiple languages in a focused way every single week, but stay with me. If you're just learning one language, you don't need to worry about this, you can skip ahead. I feel like one language per week is the most that I can do, where I feel like I'm targeting my pain points and I'm getting quality time with the target language, but it's also not so long to where I'm getting bored and I want to move on to something else, because that's a very, very common occurrence with me. I know myself, and I know that if I were doing, for example, one language per day, I would not be retaining anything. I also know that, I get restless easily, like I said, and I start to miss my other languages. So that's, for example, why prepping for the DALP C1 exam all that time ago, that was a nightmare. Because I just couldn't wait to get back to my other languages, So one language per week is really perfect for me. Ein bisschen Salz drauf. Yum. You know what my boyfriend said to me the other day? He said, "I love your liberal use of pepper." And he completely meant it. I love to put a fuck ton of pepper on everything. Above all, a salt and pepper tomato. Baby, it's me. You know me. Anyway, so back to my routine. Someone recently left me a comment on Instagram about my shuffling method and said, "But Elysse, doesn't that mean that you only study every language about every month and a half?" And yes, that's true, but here are a few reasons why that's okay. 1, I am at a more advanced stage with most of my languages, meaning that, I'm kind of at the point of maintaining them, so I'm not at risk to forget as much. Number 2, it's also just a fact of reality that the more languages that you learn, the less time you're going to have to study each of them. That is a hard truth that I have accepted. I know that a lot of you are just trying to learn a language or two, so this is not a concern for you, which is good. But finally, this is a point that I've always tried to get across to you guys. My focused study, where I'm focused on a single language, that is not my only contact with my target languages. It's not once it's not Turkish week, I completely forget about Turkish. Even when I'm not studying, I still get videos on social media. My algorithm, it understands me, and I get videos in all of my target languages, so that's good, passive contact. And I just think about languages all the time, which it's kind of like a reflex and it's hard to turn off. I don't know how to explain it exactly. It's for example, the other day I'm on the bus. I live in Berlin, so everything's in German. And I pass a store advertising that they sell Tabakwaren, which in German means tobacco products. But I'm sitting there thinking, that's so funny, tabak, because tabak in Turkish, that means plate. So, the first glance, I'm reviewing the word for tobacco products in German, but then that also leads me to think about Turkish. And then while I'm sitting there thinking about that, I'm like, oh, well, if tobacco isn't tabak in Turkish, then what is tobacco? And I look it up and I find out that it's tutun. So that's what I mean. Just because I'm not actively practicing a language doesn't mean that I have zero contact with it and I forget everything, I need a refill, actually. Come with. We can do a little bit of water pouring ASMR. Are we over ASMR? I feel like ASMR used to be entertaining, but suddenly now everybody has misophonia. I don't know when that happened. Gotta stay hydrated. That's actually one of my, I don't want to say goals, because I feel like that It's just so corny now, but it is one of my ways that I'm directing my energy this year is drinking more water. Where was I? So welcome back to my planning doc. As you can see here, here's my shuffle cycle that I just keep for reference that I showed you earlier. So let's just go through these little kind of categories that I have here that help me make my plan. So up top is the language that I'm studying. And then we have the weakness or focus section. So in my case, that was, I want to get better at like speaking in the past in Turkish. And one way that I always get better at speaking in the past in any language is just practicing telling my own stories. So I put, learning storytelling phrases and just reviewing the past tense because, oh my God, the past tense is in Turkish is so complicated. It's like, sidebar. There's this thing that people commonly call the gossip tense in Turkish, and it's really interesting because it's basically like the past tense that you use when you didn't witness it yourself, and it's kind of like hearsay. Isn't that interesting? Fun fact. So yeah, that is my weakness that I'm targeting this week. And then comes the interests and vibes section. So the thing about this section for me, it's kind of like really wide open, but this is the most important part because I think this is one of the biggest reasons that people don't actually follow through with their language learning because they don't introduce anything that they're personally interested in, whether that's, topics they want to learn to talk about, introducing their hobbies and learning how to talk about their hobbies, TV or media in the language that they're interested in. Okay, and this one, if you don't have a uterus, if you don't menstruate, you don't need to worry about this. I also don't want to hear any stupid comments because I'm a grown woman, I can do what I want. But this is basically a science experiment at this point. This is a recent development. So if you've never heard of cycle syncing, it's basically just when you sync your menstrual cycle to whatever in your life you want to manage better with like your energy and set yourself up for success. So if you're a business owner, I've seen people like syncing their business to their cycle. Something that is really important for me to follow through on obviously is my language learning. So like during the menstrual phase of the menstrual cycle, I feel like shit about myself. I always get really insecure during my menstrual phase. Obviously energy is low, things like that. So I set myself up for a lot more passive activities in my language learning that might change during the ovulation phase. For example, when you're ovulating, you feel a lot more confident, you're in a much better mood, you have a lot more energy because, your body is like, okay, we don't need to get explicit, but so during the ovulation phase, you might do things that require a bit more confidence, like, scheduling more classes, more time with native speakers, tackling grammar, because that's something that's really demotivating and you need like, a lot more confidence. Love language learning science experiments, women in STEM. Okay, so then considering all of these together, that's how we come up with this. Okay, now I'm going to demo this for you guys in real time, because I told you that it takes me like no longer than 10 to 15 minutes, so the proof is in the pudding, baby. Let's actually do it. Let's plan next week's German studies because as you can see, after Turkish week, which is this week, we move on to German. In German, I am at B2, C1, fucking always. I don't know what level I'm at and I really don't care to know at this point. So I just kind of accept that that's where I'm at. Weakness and focus, I really need to strengthen my speaking confidence because the words are in my head. I just think sometimes the German word order is still like, it's still just kind of slow to come out for me. I want to speak more confidently and just practice speaking confidence and speaking more fluidly. And vocabulary, of course. There's always some new vocabulary to be learned, so why not? Interests and vibes, these are things that I want to do. So of course, I feel like I am always just talking about practicing storytelling. It's a really good tool to get better at speaking or writing because you have to, of course, have all the words for the story. So there's vocab. You need to know how to talk in the past tense. So there's a little bit of grammar. You need to tell it in like an engaging way. So there's kind of that speaking confidence and like, I don't know, just that pizzazz, So I find that storytelling and learning to tell stories from my life, it really helps me improve my production or my output, I guess you could say. And something that I also want to do, I've gotten back into writing recently. I'm so excited about this. I think it's just, I've been listening to a lot of Leonard Cohen and I just love the way that he writes. I started a writing club in Berlin for the gals recently, for the Mädels and Dadels in Berlin. And so I'm feeling really inspired to write again. So I want to write a poem in German. I actually recently did this with my friend Sam. We went to one of the museums here in Berlin, the Gemälde Museum, I think. And from the placards, like the little placards under the paintings, we would like, jot down words. And then we used those words to write a collaborative poem. So we like took turns writing the lines. It was really cool. and I've just been really feeling really inspired to write. So why not write in German? Let's do it. So how about write a journal entry talking about a past event? Why don't I tell the story? Okay, I think my story I'm going to be working on telling next week, or at least one of them, is I did a huge hike in Guatemala a couple of years ago. We hiked El Volcán San Pedro. It was very beautiful. It was very taxing on the body, so I think I'll have a lot to say about that. Because I wrote about it on Monday, I think I can do some actual speaking practice on Tuesday. So, record myself speaking about Guatemala hike. What are we going to do on Wednesday? How about we read German poetry? And then on Thursday, I'm going to write a German poem, even if it's a small one, about nature. How about we write about nature? Because I feel like I don't have that much nature vocabulary. And then on Friday, freitags versuche ich normalerweise eine Unterrichtsstunde zu haben. So we're gonna do a Lingoda class, maybe one about like poetry or nature if possible. Because Lingoda, there's just so many good topics and so many interesting topics to choose from. So if I can find anything that kind of relates to what I've been doing for the entire week, I'm gonna go with that. And as a person who always forgets to book their classes in advance, Lingoda is actually great for that because they have tons of classes available on like every topic that you can imagine. So in the morning, I can just be like, oh, let me book my class for this evening, which is so nice. So nice. Thank you to Lingoda for sponsoring this video. If you have no idea what I'm talking about, Lingoda is an online language school where I take all of my German lessons, but you can also learn any of these languages. I might get into the Italian soon, low-key. And like I was saying, if you're a busy person or you need classes that can fit into a busy schedule, you can book with them 24/7 because it's all online and the teachers, they teach from like all over the world. My absolute favorite thing though are the class topics because they don't just sit there and like bore you with grammar, although they do have that if you want that, but it's not just like following a textbook. The topics are really intriguing. Like I recently had a class about like, is there life on other planets? I took a class on media literacy recently, one on mythology. Like they just have so many topics. I even, when I got here, when I first arrived in Germany, I took a couple of their beginner classes to review stuff like groceries and handling phone calls, which I'm the queen of German phone calls now. I've had to do so many phone calls for this apartment hunt, you guys, which I will also make a video about soon, but I've gotten so, I'm like, oh, hier spricht Frau da Vega, ich melde mich an, zu fragen, ob Sie den Vertrag schon gesendet haben. Don't sleep on me, do not sleep. You can truly customize your language learning experience on Lingoda so much. Like they have a handful of different learning plans for like whatever you're trying to accomplish in your target language. If you're looking to make a lot of progress in a short amount of time, or you just want to develop a really great speaking habit, then the Lingoda Sprint is the right choice. It's a 2-month challenge where you take a class every day or every other day. And then at the end, if you finish all the classes you sign up for, you can either get half your money back or more free classes. But the best part is you don't have to spend a single penny to try out Lingoda. I left you a link in the description. You can take a 7-day free trial, take some classes, see how you like it, which I know you will. And you can use the code 2025 Elysse to get $25 off whatever Lingoda plan you choose. So 2 takeaways that I want you to have from the way that I just showed you how I plan. The first thing, I mentioned it in my New Year's video as well, plan tasks. Do not plan around time, plan tasks. As you can see, since I'm just studying one language per week, I'm just planning one concrete task for myself per day. And you might want to do more than that, which is completely fine, but what's important is that you're planning tasks, not time commitments. Basically, the long and short of it, why I don't like planning around time or saying like, I have to study for 5 hours this week. The reason I don't like it, it's a lot harder to translate time into progress because it's so subjective. So take, for example, 30 minutes. There's a lot that you can do in 30 minutes and there's so little that you can do in 30 minutes. Second takeaway I want you to have, plan your breaks. You see how I'm only planning Monday through Friday. I don't plan stuff for weekends. I kind of have the attitude of like, if it happens, that's great, but I'm not gonna, plan anything because honestly, my weekends can get really crazy. And if I don't follow through on it, it's just gonna make me feel bad. So the bad thing is I feel like we really only truly accept taking breaks when we've already reached burnout and like we can't keep going anymore. And that's perfectly valid. We should be doing that, but why should we only take breaks when you're already at the point of burnout and beating yourself up? That just doesn't feel right. I feel like breaks should be preventative and not just like reactive, Why not stop before you get to that point? There's already like so much subconscious shame around needing breaks and taking breaks. So that's why I plan regular breaks in my language learning. And I find that because I plan breaks, it lessens lessens how many like total burnout breaks that I end up needing, because burnout breaks, they're often for like a lot longer than regular planned breaks because there's so much shame and like we keep avoiding it. And that's it. That is really how I make a weekly language learning plan that does not fail me. I don't fail it. No one's failing. Let me know what questions you guys have about building a language learning plan. I'll try to respond to everybody in the comments. Thank you for tuning into this episode of, I don't know, Elysse de Vega. That's me. I will be back very soon with a lovely video about a recent trip to Portugal I had.